Probably have some stragglers joining, but we'll go ahead and get started here. Appreciate everybody joining. Today, we're going to be talking about the growth engine for elite law firms. Myself, Chris from BluShark Digital, SVP of Sales. Then we have Kevin here. Do you want to do a quick intro, Kevin?
Yeah, hey everybody. My name is Kevin Mould. I'm the Director of Product Marketing here at Supio. We are an AI platform for plaintiff law firms.
Awesome. So the goal here is obviously, you see the topic. We want to talk from the BluShark side. We're going to talk a lot about AI, which is a big topic right now, and we'll kind of get started right into this. So the first thing that I wanted to cover from the AI aspect is how local SEO is influencing LLMs. And what that means is essentially how important is Google and how important is it to get in the three pack. What we're seeing right now is a direct correlation with some of the primary LLMs or these large language models. So, for example, we have Gemini AIO AI mode. No surprise, Google has a direct Google Map Pack integration. So Google Map Packs are pulling up directly there. With Microsoft Bing using ChatGPT, Micro, Copilot, Bing Places, but primarily Google Maps is the biggest influence in those results. And then when we look at Brave, Claude AI, it's using some proprietary, and I would say no pun intended, but they're the brave one trying to kind of start their own proprietary, I guess, search engine. But it's also showing Google Maps and Google Business Profile elements. So very much a big influence there. And then when you look at comment and perplexity, Google Maps is the biggest influence, plus some additional local resources. With that in mind, I think it's important to understand the importance of Google Map Pack, not only where the placements are, but how do you actually leverage and get into the top three? Because if you're not in the top three, you don't really have visibility. So this is an example of what a Google Map Pack looks like. You can see the top three here, what the sidebar looks like when you're looking up a Google Map Pack profile. From here, we want to dive into, I guess one of the biggest topics is how visible can you be? And the most essential way to maximize your Google profile is to understand what your reach is. How far from your office can you actually show? And it's important to know it's not a set distance radius. It depends on the saturation of the law firms. So, for example, if there's a searcher 20 miles from your office to the east and there's no competitors between you and that searcher, you are the nearest best answer. If there are not a lot of firms in the outskirt markets, and you can see markets like Oak Ridge here or McLeansville, Pleasant Garden, you have a better ability to rank from Greensboro out into these markets. On the flip side, if your office is in Pleasant Garden, it's going to be much harder and near impossible to rank into Greensboro because Greensboro is a more competitive market. So again, it's important to understand your current market, your current location, and how that allows you to rank out. Now, what that looks like in real time is something like this. This is two firms within a block of each other. One is fully optimized. They've done the right things. They've optimized their Google profile, the website, all those signals Google needs, and you can see how well they're ranking. A block away, a firm that does the same thing, same practice area, not ranking as well. So really the difference is the signals and the optimization of those foundational elements with the website and the Google profile. So it really does matter how well things are set up within your Google profile and your website in order for you to have more visibility. Now, this is another example of a firm that wasn't doing well. It was an existing firm that had a decent foundation, but their reach wasn't very well. Once we reset the optimization and dialed things in, you can see 3 months later and 5 months later what that means in real time and how that can increase your ranking. And I would say any firm out there right now that's doing well, that's maybe more built out, that's seeing pretty good results. Here's an example of a firm that was doing well, doing really good. The difference here is it doesn't look like a huge difference, but by increasing their radius and their rankings into the top three for all of the area, that gave them additional 50 plus quality calls, meaning calls that lasted 30 seconds or longer. So again, even if you're doing well, the question is, are you maxing out your reach and your radius? From that, let's assume that you have Google dialed in. I want to give you a kind of a real-time example of what does that look like in these LLMs and what's changed recently. So when we look at ChatGPT, we're seeing a direct correlation with how Google Maps looks. So this is an example of how Google Map Packs is influencing ChatGPT. You can see that it's pulling from Google's Map Pack, and this is what you see when you search ChatGPT. When you click on that, you're seeing the actual attorney bar, the navigation bar, pull up on the right, just like a Google profile. So it's a very much a heavy influence right now with ChatGPT. So the rule of thumb is if you're not ranking in Google in the top three, you're not likely to rank in ChatGPT. So it's very important to get that foundation dialed. Another example here would be Brave and Claude. And you can see right here, theirs looks a little different, but it's very similar. They're pulling from Google's map pack and then their own proprietary results, but you're seeing something very similar. One thing that's important to note is the tracking is a little trickier with these AI platforms. The number that they're giving you is the Google profile number. It's not going to give you like a call rail number. So it is a little harder to track if they do a direct call from here. Most of these LLMs are driving you to the Google business profile. So again, just put more emphasis on how important it is to be in the three pack of Google business profiles. One other example here is comment and perplexity. Now, this one's pulling from Google's map pack and additional results as well. The one difference with comment and perplexity is that it'll sometimes show a five pack. Most of the time it's a three pack, but sometimes you will see a five pack. Outside of that difference, it's very similar in where it's pulling, in the type of results, and where it's sending you. Now, from there, some of the, I guess, the takeaways here before I pass the baton to Kevin is I want to talk about how Google's keeping up. And one of the questions we get is Google going to be a non-factor? Google is doing a lot to stay on top of things, and it wants to make sure it stays really relevant. So one of the things it did recently was it actually eliminated the FAQ section on the maps and replaced it with a Q&A button or an ask button. Now, what that does is it allows a user to go in and ask a question that Google is going to basically use AI to then answer. Where it gets that information, and this is really key for firms, is the back end of the Google profile. So you can actually control the narrative by going into your Google profile and making sure to fill out those FAQs so that when somebody goes on to those ask buttons and asks Google, you're controlling the narrative of how it answers. So really important there. The next thing we look at is the removal of X on the share, right? So in the past, the share link had X on here. What Google started identifying is these AI platforms, these LLMs, are utilizing a lot of Facebook and Reddit. So what it did was it removed X and it essentially replaced it with Reddit and Facebook. It's favoring the forum and higher user engagement platforms, which we see as a sign that they are wanting to make sure and maintain what these LLMs are looking for so that Google stays relevant. Last piece I wanted to throw out there was, we've been doing local search for a really long time. We just put out a new book, so feel free to scan this code and get your free copy. This was launched just in the last week. I'm going to pass the baton to you, Kevin. And actually stop sharing for 1 second. You can stop.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Chris. Okay. Content here. Okay, so if we look at and sort of break down the challenges that firms are faced with, like you're thinking, why is there an AI platform and a marketing agency together co-presenting on this webinar? And like the simple, straightforward answer to that is you spend a lot of time and investment, both monetary and actual hours of your time trying to figure out how to make yourself visible, how to acquire clients, and help people find your firm. And so once you acquire those folks, you need to be able to capitalize on those cases, right? Whether that means making sure that you're, winning as many of them as possible, or even potentially extracting additional, settlement value out of the cases that you are working. So if you think inside the firm, right? Um, Manually reviewing medical records is not fun, right? You deal with piles and piles of these things and are trying to sort of get to the case truth that lies within those pages of medical records. And so the faster you can do that, what that actually means is that you're, reducing the time on desk of each case that you're working. So you're able to process more cases in the same period of time. And that's a direct through line to your firm's revenue. Um, Right. Same thing with the time it takes to build chronologies or demands, right? Those are slow processes that AI can help accelerate. And then there's also sort of this idea of being able to identify, either gaps in treatment or, aggravated pre-existing injuries. Maybe there was a missed like TBI diagnosis. And these are all things that can actually have a direct impact on the ultimate settlement value that might, take something from from a basic liability case to something that you either might take to trial or that you might try and get more than the standard insurance minimums. And so right, and that's all directly connected to the investment that you're putting into your marketing. Because every case that comes in, you probably acquired somehow, like these people found out about your firm somehow, whether it was search, whether they saw an ad, right? And so now you want to be able to capitalize on that. And so Supio is sort of an end-to-end platform for plaintiff law firms. And so we cover everything from intake through to litigation. And I won't exhaustively cover every single feature on here, but generally speaking, the idea I want everyone to walk away with is that starting from the second that somebody calls into your firm, Supio can help with that process of making sure you're automatically capturing all of that call data, like scoring and identifying whether the case is a fit, whether it's one you want to retain, whether it's one you want to refer. And then when you do sign that client in pre-litigation, we're helping you automatically build those medical chronologies, identifying any missing records that you might have. So maybe you have a medical bill without an associated record, or you have a medical record without an associated bill, and therefore you don't have a complete picture of the damages. Um, and even with those bills, we'll help you like automatically extract all of that data and like build out your case billing and your case ledger, and then assemble all of that information together into demand levers and exhibits. And if you do litigate cases or you do take cases to trial, we can also help there, moving through the discovery process, creating deposition questions, right, drafting your motions, complaints, briefs, everything that you need to file with the court in order to drive that process forward, as well as allowing you to sort of like interrogate and interact with all of the documents for each of your cases so that you can sort of craft and tune and refine your arguments. Like we see lots and lots of creative use cases among our customer base with attorneys that like will use our chat to form virtual jury panels to test their arguments. They'll ask the chat to, to play the role of opposing counsel and test their arguments with it so that they can feel confident bringing those into court. Where I do want to spend a little bit more time today is actually on talking about intake, which is sort of a new product that we're bringing to market with Scipio, because I think it has the most direct connection into the marketing funnel. And we sort of think of the benefits of our intake product in three ways. One is expanding that coverage to 24/7. So whether it's a holiday, after hours, weekend, or maybe you're just a small practice, right? And you've invested time in marketing, but it's really only you and one or two other people that are there to answer the phone. And you're in a deposition or you're at trial or you're busy working with another client. You just can't be there to answer the phone. AI can help play that role to make sure that you're not missing these inbound calls. And then for even those calls that are being fielded either by you or by staff at your firm, we can help coach those. We can help score those automatically to make sure that every actual human agent is performing their best on those calls and that you're capturing all of the necessary information from everybody that's reaching out to your firm to make sure that you can qualify that case and figure out whether it's something that you want to take. And the ultimate benefit of that is better conversion. And so quickly stepping through, the first feature that we have is our intake voice agent. And so this is helping with those after hours and overflow calls. So it'll be there and it'll pick up the phone immediately as soon as somebody calls, right? Because the reality is, if somebody calls your firm and you miss it, they're just going to move on to the next firm. They're not going to try calling you back. And we've even seen it if somebody's like really, really in need of help and seeking legal representation, even if they have to wait and sit on the phone, they'll still hang up and go call another firm. So speed to answer is really important here, which is what the intake voice agent is designed to help with. And we absolutely do not imagine this as like a full replacement for your intake staff. This is really there to support, just to make sure that nothing is falling through the cracks and that there's like always somebody or something there to answer the phone when somebody's calling so that you don't miss that lead. And then if that is a qualified lead, what we can do is we can make sure that that is immediately warm transferred either to an intake specialist or to an attorney to make sure that that client gets retained. And this is where the scoring agent comes into play, which is, even if you're not using the after hours coverage agent, you can still benefit from the scoring agent on every call. And so, even if you have a live person at your firm taking the call, this is going to be listening in on those calls, and it's going to be attached to your firm's standard operating procedures. So the types of scoring and the things that you look at to determine whether a case is qualified or not. And it's going to be scoring each call against those criteria, and it's going to capture things like lead origin, so figuring out like where this person found out about you from, so you can understand what your best converting sources are. And longer term, this is also going to not just work on calls, but we'll also be scoring leads that are coming maybe inbound through chat on your site or the other ways that folks are finding you. And what's really cool about the way we've set it up is every call or every conversation with the same lead is like all captured under a single profile. So, if Chris is a potential client and he's calling my firm, I'm not going to have like three individual lists for Chris. It's actually going to capture all of the conversations I've had with Chris under a single lead and score them all collectively to sort of perform like build a cohesive view of the conversation I'm having with that potential client. And it'll also do something like flag leads for rescue. So maybe we didn't get all the information we needed after the initial call, and that actually requires an attorney to immediately follow up and get a little bit of additional information to make sure that client gets signed. And the last is the intake coaching agent. And this is specifically for helping your intake representatives live on the phone as they're talking to customers to make sure that they're gathering the correct information. And so that from a pure compliance perspective, just make sure that they're asking all the right questions and that they're not missing anything they need to ask. So if you sort of think of, your intake folks as the, first customer facing touch point in your business, you sort of want to make sure that they're asking all the right questions, that they're gathering all the right information, and also just from an empathy perspective, that they're presenting themselves to clients in the right way. And those are all things that our AI can check for and monitor and give you data and feedback on so that you can help tune and optimize those processes. And that looks like Chris, handing it back over to you here.
Awesome. Let me share my screen here. So I'd say now is the fun part of the webinar here. Wanted to ask some questions for you, Kevin, and then we'll get some questions from the rest of the team. But before we do that, let me share my screen real quick. Wait a minute, where am I at here? Here we go. We'll do a quick poll. Please fill that out if you get a chance. And then while everyone has a chance to fill that poll out, I wanted to go through some Q&A with Kevin here. So I think the first question that I was kind of curious of, Kevin, is when you're acquiring a client, being the first step, what would you say are the economics behind why a firm should invest in AI to manage the intake and to work their cases?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is that kind of going back to the beginning is the idea is that having an AI platform for intake and then having that connected into the way that you're going to go work the case, it essentially assures that you're not wasting any of that marketing spend, right? I'm a marketer, and so the worst thing I can think of is having budget, having these hours and time and energy and money that you're putting into trying to get your business out there, and then having that not convert into revenue for your firm. And so whether that means that, money that you spent on acquiring a lead isn't wasted because, you missed that call, right? Intake helps with that. And similarly, when you do convert that lead to a signed client, the AI is what's helping you make sure that you're delivering the full value of that case and potentially being able to deliver more cases in the same period of time than you were previously. So actually be able to represent more clients in aggregate. And these are all things that have a direct through line to firm revenue and profitability.
Okay. And then just quick follow-up question there. Where do you feel like firms typically see the fastest ROI? Is it like time saved, better case selection, something else?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's a couple things. One is that I think just the speed at which cases can move forward gets faster, right? Because you're not stuck on each case trying to run these processes. Like you can kind of keep each case humming along at a little bit of a better clip. And so, what we've seen is that we've seen up to sort of like 28% lower time on desk per case. So if you think what that means across the space of the year, that means with the same staff, right, with the same paralegal and attorney staff, you can complete more cases because it's
That's
taking
huge.
less of each individual's time to work on an individual case. And then I
Yeah,
think
no, that's huge.
it's it's also helping, I'm glad that you mentioned case selection because I actually think that's another huge piece of it where we look at intake and some of those scoring capabilities. It's how are you making sure that you are spending your time on the right cases for your firm, right? And then possibly, referring cases that you may get in that are not ones that you want to take, but that, you're partnered with. You're partnered with other firms that will take them, or you just want to put them on like a referral network for somebody to go grab them. And either way, now you're focusing on what you want to focus on, and then you can get paid for the cases you refer.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that's great. Let's see here. So another quick question, I guess, when I dive deeper, when you're talking about maximizing case value, and we're just talking about ROI, can you give it maybe an example of that?
Yeah, so there's sort of two examples I think about here. One is aggravated injuries, and the other is then or something like a misdiagnosis. So when we talk about aggravated injuries, um, if we go back to the old way of doing things like take AI off the table, um, a lot of times what you're going to focus on or what cases are going to be driven on is there's like the most obvious injuries that present themselves, immediately after an accident or immediately after like a slip and fall or something like that. And then we're going to go address that and use that as the foundation and basis of the case. But what AI can do is, without even necessarily having to ask it, and certainly you can also ask it to do this as well, is, look for like if you have somebody's medical records, including those that date back prior to the date of incident, you can actually see if there are any injuries that this person had that maybe were aggravated or got worse as a result of the accident. Um, at hand and then see if those are a possible chance to go look for additional settlement value. And then the other thing, and we've actually seen this with a lot of customers we work with, is that what AI can do is can flag things like say, it looks like that this person had a lot of evidence of complaining about, neck pain and headaches, and that those complaints and reports actually persisted, across a 3-month course of treatment. But nobody ever actually evaluated this person for a concussion or a TBI or anything like that at any point. And then when that evaluation does get performed, sometimes they find that there was a concussion or some other kind of traumatic brain injury. And again, that's another lever that potentially drives up the settlement value for that client. Because
Yeah.
somebody comes in from a car accident with a broken leg, or like a giant laceration or something like that, like that's kind of like the immediate focus and attention.
No, that makes sense. And I'm curious, a lot of firms that aren't using AI are probably relying on, past experiences, maybe more instinct. Do you see firms over relying on gut instinct versus data when you first engage with them?
I think what I think is cool about AI is that is sort of the conversational nature of it, right? It's if all you're presented with is just like a dashboard and some raw data, um, it is sometimes I think easy to say like, hey, this data doesn't match my intuition or this data doesn't, match what I understand to be true. But if you're given a case file and you can kind of just use your own questions and the way you would phrase things to just interrogate it and ask about what's in there, I think we find that people trust what's in there
Makes
uh,
sense. Yeah.
more. And they also have, right, like the way our platform works is you get traceability from the output back to the original file. So you can see what we're telling you, hey, here's our analysis of what happened, and we'll show you exactly which document that came from. So you don't have to take our word for it. You can actually go see this paragraph in this medical record. That's where we got this
Yeah.
from.
Awesome. No, I love that. We do marketing at BluShark, so I'm curious from your perspective, how do you think the AI tooling can help inform the way firms actually market?
Yeah. Um, there's a couple things, and I think where I want to focus here is also on intake. And what I think is cool about the intake product that we've built is that like we've intentionally designed for like, yes, you want to be able to qualify these cases and make sure that they're cases you want to take and that you're capturing all the information you need from those cases. But the other thing they can capture, and from our early customers that are using this product, this is like absolutely part of what they capture in these conversations and the understanding of like where did this person find out about your firm? Was it just did they, type it into ChatGPT, they type it into Google, they see it on a bus, a billboard, like how did they know to reach out and contact you? And so when you can capture that information as part of the conversation, and we have that, across all these intake conversations you're having, we can actually provide an aggregate view of like, hey, here is the channels that are converting into people landing on your website, or calling your firm, like direct from the words of these people themselves. And so you get that sense of how people are finding you, and so you understand
Yeah.
what's landing people. And also, if you look at what cases you're taking and what cases you're not taking, you can even look at that as like, okay, here's how people who I'm not signing as clients or I'm referring out are finding me, and here's how people who I am retaining as clients are finding me. And if there's a difference between those things, that's also a meaningful signal.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, and part of the battle is getting leads to be visible, to see the firm, to reach out. You mentioned intake, and it sparked a question. What do you feel like the biggest breakdown is of intake? Do you think it's speed to response, qualification, follow up? Where are you guys usually seeing the biggest breakdown from firms that aren't using something like Supio?
I mean, I think there's two things. One is just completely missed calls or missed leads, because maybe if you have like a very boutique specialized law practice and there's not a lot of firms out there, sure, it may be that person is going to follow up with you again and try and use your firm. But if somebody was just in a car crash and your firm doesn't answer on the next call, they're just going to move on to the next firm they find. And so that's
Yep.
a potential case that you're not getting. And speed is there too. I think it said earlier, we also find that customers, some of the customers we've worked with have told us, we know for a fact that if somebody calls our firm and they have to sit on hold for 2 minutes, they're just going to hang up and go call the next firm. It's waiting on
Yep.
hold for a couple minutes is almost the same as having not answered the call at all.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think to tie onto that, referrals are really important for law firms. And an interesting stat came out recently that majority of referrals are now, validating online. So to your point, I can only imagine a firm getting a referral, calling that firm, waiting on hold for 2 minutes, having a bad experience. It kind of diminishes that value of that referral, right? Totally makes sense. I think I have one more question that the top of mind for you is kind of an overarching, maybe a tough one. But if you walked in a firm today and you could only fix one thing about the process immediately to improve the outcome, what would that be?
Um, I think the first assessment I would make is understanding like what is that firm still doing manually that does not have to be done manually. Because that's where you're going to get the biggest cost and revenue benefit from. And like just at a human level, it's also where you're going to get the greatest like happiness benefit from the people like working in the firm. Like just going into a firm and saying like, even if you ignore the revenue aspect for a second, you tell the paralegals like, hey, what I'm telling you is that you're going to be able to spend more of your time working with your clients and less of your time punching numbers into a stupid spreadsheet. Like 10 times out of 10, people are going to take that deal and take that
Yeah.
opportunity because it allows them to actually do the value added work that they enjoy doing.
Perfect. So making sure you go and identify what's manually being done, find a way to eliminate that, saving manpower time, but more efficient,
Yeah.
right? Oh, makes sense. Love it. Awesome. I think that's all the questions I had for you right now. I'll probably have some more pop up if we have time.
Awesome. Well, I mean, I know I just talked a lot about AI. So I think a good question for you, Chris, is understanding like what do firms need to be wary of or aware of when it comes to AI and marketing?
Yeah, that's an important question. We get that a lot. I would say there's a lot of shiny objects. There's companies over promising, being able to provide results with everything AI, link building, local content, dev, essentially saying, hey, we can do this much less expensive by using all AI. But when we track firms that are using these types of tools, we're finding there's a really big gap in how much can actually be achieved. We feel like there still needs to be a human strategy and oversight. So we can't rely 100% on AI. We still need that human touch. And we've actually tested some of these products ourselves and to due diligence to continue improving our own AI process internally. And what we're finding, especially with technical, is that the bots get it wrong a lot. And one wrong move from the AI tool can really mess up the whole structure of a section of the site, and it can drastically affect traffic and conversion. And to even pile on top of that, much harder to fix those issues when you get a bot to go in there and start doing things automatically. Sometimes it can take a lot of human effort to fix an issue that took a bot. 20 seconds to destroy. We're actually leveraging AI a lot in our processes, and it's been about 2 to 3 years. We've had an AI division. We've built personalized content producing GPTs for specific clients to include their tone, nuances, and really want to make sure that like content, for example, still speaks to them, but we still have a human eye on it. So I guess the easy answer there is a lot of shiny objects. Over promising on being able to do everything AI is probably one of the biggest things to be weary of when it comes to AI marketing.
Mhm. Awesome. I'm gonna sort of throw like an interesting one in here. That's something I've been thinking about as you were talking earlier, right? For any business and especially for law, like for the longest time, building a Google business profile and making sure that was indexed in search has been the gold standard and like the thing that really matters for people being able to find you because that is the primary search engine like driving all of this traffic. And I found it really interesting, right, that a lot of these right, these generative AI platforms are now essentially saying, hey, we know this is the gold standard, so like that's what we're going to read to try and find this information. But like if I asked you to put on your like forecasting or future casting hat here a little bit, like do you see some of the generative AI providers like trying to get into this game, or do you think they're going to try and like continue to work with, these concepts that have sort of existed as like the mainstay for how you do this for a long time?
Yeah, when you think about the longevity, Google's been doing Google profiles for over a decade, and a lot of businesses have poured a lot of time, energy, and effort in building these profiles, earning reviews. And when you think about trying to compete against something like that, it's similar to trying to compete against like a Facebook. And you set up a social media platform. How do you compete with someone that's already well known, that's built into the app stores to the phones? So yes, there may be some LLMs like Brave that are trying to do it themselves, but my hunch is that it's always going to be secondary, kind of like Bing to Google. I think that Google's market share is 90+%, and I
Mhm.
don't really see that changing. So the ease of a customer going on and identifying reviews and seeing, example myself, if I'm looking for an HVAC company and I go onto Google, I can clearly see reviews comparison. I can read, I can look at their website. You can get a lot of information from those profiles. And I would compare that to even Yelp. It's just not the same. You don't have that trust level. So, my hunch is Google profile is not going anywhere and it's going to be more dominant. It's going to become a needed aspect of these LLMs to build trust for a user. And then the last thing I would have anybody envision is go back before Google profiles existed and imagine trying to search for a local business. What would you rely on? You don't have those signals. You don't have the address, how close it is, reviews, all those tools right there at the click of a button. You have to go through organic pages and research, and it takes a lot of time. Without the reviews, it really hurts as well. So reviews are probably one of the biggest pieces that Google got right. And businesses that have 500 to 1,000 plus reviews, it's going to be really hard to expect them to go to a whole other search engine and build that up again. So
Yeah,
yeah.
awesome. All right, well, last one for you then, which is, beyond its applications in digital marketing, what are some of the other ways that you think about how firms can, use AI to help with lead generation and case acquisition?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of great tools out there, AI chatbots, answering services, and those can really help streamline and make sure that calls are answered. There's also a lot of intake grading platforms, and those help catch lead leaks when you should be calling people back, help with follow up. They can also help with training intake specialists who are regularly missing the mark on something. So a lot of it's making sure you have processes in place to really inspect what you expect, make sure that that your processes are dialed. Um, there's also products like you guys, they're Supio, that are helping streamline the litigation and case management processes, and that really helps make sure the marketing dollars you're spending are maximized with higher case outcomes. Like we talked earlier, case selection, really being able to fine tune not only the leads that are coming in, but once they come in, how you manage those internally.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
Any other questions from you, Kevin, or anybody else have questions that you want to throw in the question Q&A section?
Let's see. Oh, interesting. Okay, we got one in the chat here, which is, how would we explain to intake staff that something, like Supio's intake product is not intended to replace them, assuming they have an intake staff? Um, I would say two things here. One is, right, somebody picking up like especially when you look at plaintiff law and the personal injury space, like if somebody is calling your firm to seek legal representation, like it's probably not the best day of their life. And they would probably be doing rather be doing anything else than trying to seek legal representation because they got in a car accident or because they're injured in some way, shape, or form. Um, and so number one is we know that a person picking up the phone is still by far the preferred outcome for anybody that's calling in your firm. So the way that we think about these voice agents is that like there are situations where like a person just absolutely cannot be there. Right. And so that's where the voice agents are designed to like fill in those gaps. And then the other thing is that, you know, if you invest in something like an intake product from Supio, is that you actually don't even have to use the voice agent component if you don't want to, right? There's still a ton of value in using the information capture and the lead scoring on every single one of those calls that your intake specialists are taking to make sure that you're getting all the information that you need up front to make sure that that client is a good fit and that's somebody you want to sign and you have all the information that you need to start working that case.
No, that's great. It's great information. I'm curious, and again, I have another question I was thinking about. When you guys have firms adopt, your process, your systems, where do you see firms struggle the most when trying to adopt a system like this?
I mean, this is not meant to be sort of like what's the word I'm looking for? This isn't meant to be sort of like a throwaway answer, but it is just the fact that like AI is so new, right? Like the reason people struggle to adopt it is like if you go back to software 5 years ago, like everything is like fairly deterministic. Like there's just a given way to like go through and do everything. Like AI is just a little bit of a different ball game. Like its limits are somewhat determined by the limits of the creativity of the person using it. And so I think what's interesting and challenging about AI adoption is that like if the answer is like, can I be getting more value out of this? The answer is almost 100% of the time, like, yes, there's always a way to be getting more value out of it by getting more advanced and thoughtful about how it gets applied and how it gets used. And so the biggest, I would say opportunity that we have when we go work with new customers is, helping set them up from the get-go to make sure that like at least the regular operational stuff that they're used to doing, we understand like how we can codify that into sets of like prompts and sort of like workflows that make sense for their firm so that they can get comfortable with the engagement pattern of using it and then start, over time, hopefully start to get a little bit more like free form and creative in their own usage of it when they start to realize some of the things that it can do.
That makes sense. And we have another question, but before we get to that, I to tag onto this, what separates firms that successfully implement this versus those that don't?
Um, what makes successful implementation is like actually attaching it to the operational process. The most successful customers we have are the ones that are saying this isn't just like an optional thing in some cases go in here. It is the firms that say like this is the way we work cases. Like when you get a case file, it goes into Supio, and then that is where we do this, that is where we work the case.
Makes sense.
And so those that have like built that standard around like it's not optional, you don't pick if it goes here, if it goes here. It's just like, hey, you grade the case, you score the lead, you figure out if you want to take it. Now you want to take it, great. Now the case file starts getting hooked into Supio, right? We connect to file management systems, case management systems, so like we can pull all that case file
Yeah,
over as you start to get those records in. But when they just build it into their operation, that's when it works super well.
awesome. And I'm assuming once that happens, you mentioned earlier, it's up to your creativity. I'm sure the firms that adopt it quickly and really get behind it, start advancing it faster, have better, then they can
Right.
start getting more advanced rather than keep it real basic, right?
Yeah,
That's
that's
cool.
right. They're absolutely the ones that see the best ROI from it.
The ones that help you evolve your process even better, right?
Yep.
So one of the questions we had, I think this is probably more for here at Blue Shark. So the question is for the smaller firms, what is the most cost effective way to scale and try and capture some of the leads away from the larger firms who have such a heavy marketing spend? And I think this is a really important question because I think there's this intuitive thought that all these bigger firms are going to capture, the entire market. So there's a couple things to keep in mind is every market is different. And it really starts city specific. So a lot of it starts with doing the research to see who's in your market and what would it actually take to compete to get into the top three. In some cases, certain cities are extremely competitive. So the solution may be changing offices, setting up a satellite office, and expanding into a less competitive market that allows you to get wins. Example is if you're in the heart of LA or dead center New York, there's going to be a lot of competition around there. So, are there other cities that you could expand to with the satellite office to start capturing wins and build that up? The research is key because when we do research, we're able to identify what those locations are. And we're looking for upside versus competition, meaning is there enough of an upside to go through the efforts of setting up a satellite office with the actual potential for clients? Going into a 5,000, 10,000 population city may not be the best because the upside's not really there. What we find often is there is these low-hanging fruit opportunities where it's not super competitive and we can win quick by having the right strategy. So it's really a matter of understanding the markets and what it looks like from more of an outside perspective and who your competition is. But also keep in mind there's room for three. So depending on how those big players in the market are spending and what they're positioning, there is ways to win. It's just really a matter of having the right strategy for the budget you have. Let's see if there's any other questions here. Some other questions. I don't see anything else. Anybody else have any questions? I mean, you gave me a lot of good information, Kevin. I think I could probably ask you a bunch more questions. I think I think there's a lot of value in making sure that, these two things connect,
Yeah,
spending the effort, energy, and the
100%.
time it takes to get leads to actually find you and click. And there's this whole conversation about being found versus chosen. And once you get chosen and they go to intake, it's crucial that the processes are dialed because a couple that slip through the cracks, not only can you lose trust in Google and stop ranking as well, but you're going to lose trust, lose leads. So I think it's really important that those two things are kind of married and merged together. Either one of those is a recipe for disaster, right? Not getting leads and calls isn't going to help, Supio's intake processes if you don't have people calling. So you need to make sure that, those things are married together. But any additional
Yeah.
thoughts before we kind of wrap up?
No, that's it. It's been fun. Thanks for inviting me, Chris.
Yeah, a lot of great information. So right here, free resource that I have right here, how to dominate ChatGPT and Gemini. So I'll leave this up for 60 seconds. Anybody feel free to click that or scan that and get that free download. And this right here for you is that your what link is that for you, Kevin?
I believe that will go to our website, but I will also say for anybody, it's out. No, where is it? It's
Right there,
over.
yeah.
I'm
One
backwards
of
on
those
it. There
ways.
it is. That's how I'm trying to point to it. If you are a Supio customer, you want to learn more about Supio, this will take you to the registration page for Supiosphere, which is our conference that we have coming up in mid-May. You can learn a lot about what's going on with our product and say 99.5% of all sessions there are actually led by our customers. So other than the
That's awesome.
keynotes, you're actually not going to hear a lot from us. You're going to hear mostly from the people using our product and the value they're getting out of
That's great. Awesome,
it.
Kevin. Appreciate your time. It was great connecting with you today. Thanks, everyone.
Likewise. All right. Thanks, everyone.